Hi, everyone. This is Dawn Richard, also known as The Awakening with Dawn, and this is the Wake Up to Real Love podcast, where we share stories of struggles and triumphs in love, sex, and relationships, along with expert advice to create more conscious connections. I am so honored tonight to have my beautiful guest, MaryBeth Gronek. Welcome, MaryBeth.
I'm so happy to be here.
MaryBeth is the CEO and founder of A Good and Spacious Land, where she writes about personal growth, relationships, and influence. MaryBeth coaches her clients on how to increase their joy, deepen their relationships, and grow their influence. And I have to say, MaryBeth, I found you through medium.com. Your writing is incredible. And almost everything that everything that you write, I either go, oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. Or I get teary-eyed like, oh my gosh, you just touched my heart and soul so deeply. So I'm so happy that you agreed to come on. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Dawn, I am so happy to be here. And I am so pleased that you found my work on Medium. And I'm very curious, which article most recently stuck out to you?
The fascinated and fascinating.
The interest one. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that was something that my ex and I struggled with. He would never really ask me about me. And he would say, well, if it's important to you, you'll just tell me. And I say, if you're interested in me, then you'll ask me.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit. So I was a bit of a late bloomer. That's probably something that's going to be one of my next upcoming pieces. So I didn't start dating until I was in my later 20s. I had a lot of health things that were going on when I was younger. And then when it became a certain point, you get to a certain age and you're like, I haven't dated yet. It feels like it's too late, right?
I still haven't dated yet.
Oh my gosh. You were married.
I haven't dated yet.
How did that even happen? Oh, that's hilarious. But yes, so I was a bit of a late bloomer, right? But I'm always very observant. So one of the things I learned by observing, right? And I would see patterns in my life of couples who have been together a really long time and were just still so taken with each other, right? And you could tell the romance was still there, the interest was still there, the connection was still there. And it's like, my gosh, they just love each other. They can't get enough of each other, and they've been together so long. And then you see another scenario where they've been together forever, but they bicker all the time. They don't seem like they enjoy each other's company. Yeah. And I wonder, I'm like, how could a similar situation, decades in a relationship, produce totally different outcomes, right? And this question was just mulling over in my mind over and over again, because again, I do want to find a life partner. I want to find someone that I can spend the rest of my life with, right? But I'm picky. I'm a little choosy. I love my life. I love where I am right now. And I would only add something that is going to be equally wonderful, right?
That's so I want adding value to your life.
Right. And the first scenario, I want the first scenario. And so I've always been a processor. So I've been thinking through, what is it? What is it about that first scenario? What is it that those couples are doing? Right. And I have a wide circle of friends and acquaintances and things like that. So I've been in this observing mode, and the two pieces that I found that fuel that fire and fuel that attraction for decades is that the woman, I can't speak for men because I'm not a man, but the woman in the relationship, she feels that the man is fascinated with her, right? And the man himself, he is fascinating. He's a person that is exciting and interesting, right? And so in that article, I break down what each of those mean. And then I've reflected on it in my own dating life, right? How I've been dating, and what are the things when, even in the initial stages, when a guy shows interest and then I lose interest. Why am I losing interest, right? And you hear this a lot, he sounds great on paper, right? The guy I'm dating, or he sounds great on a checklist. He has X, Y, Z. And then you date them and you're like, okay, well, I'm not really interested.
Right.
So what is it? And I kind of unpack that in the article. It's so many things, but what it comes down to is a man who pursues a woman, right? Who shows genuine interest, and he's not afraid to communicate it, and he's not afraid to go there, right? And to pursue her, or to pursue me, right? That's the one thing that is very important for me. And I talk about that in the article, like you need to have both though, because we've all been in situations where, you know, you do have someone who's pursuing you, right? You have someone who's interested, but they don't have much going on in their life, right? They don't got a lot going on, and that's a turnoff. So so that this was kind of a revelation for me. You do need both. You need, you know, a partner who is fascinated with you, but also who's fascinating themselves, they have their own life going on, right? They have their own goals, they have their own passions and pursuits, and they're external to you in a good way. And I think that's something that we don't talk about a lot in relationships, is that you want the closeness, right? You want the intimacy, but you also want someone who can be independent, right? Because that kind of pulls you in, especially if you're more on the feminine side, right? If you have that feminine energy, like you like a man who's that like independent, he's grounded, he's stable. And that, at least for me, that's what draws me. That's what draws me in.
Well, and I think too, because, you know, there's this concept of, you know, two halves make a whole in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, no, two wholes make infinity. 1 + 1 = infinity, because you have infinite possibilities. If you're showing up as your full authentic self and the other person is doing the same, then you have unlimited possibilities, because there is always this dynamic of wanting freedom and adventure versus wanting some safety and security, you know? So it's, how do you navigate those things when you're with a partner?
You know, I love that analogy, and it reminds me of, I've actually never said this to anyone, or even maybe I should write this in an article too. But when I think about love and when I think about a partnership, you know what comes to mind? The movie Aladdin. I think about the song A Whole New World. Like, think about it. He has this world that he's showing her, right?
Right.
He's like welcoming her into his world. And then on the flip side, she's welcoming him into her world, right? There's the scenes at the palace where he's getting to know like her family. And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's two separate people with their separate world. And they come together and they're like, look, I want to show you my world. And let's build a world together based on what we have. Right?
Because if you think, you know, these two worlds, it's not the sum of their parts, you know, it's like you're creating something so new and expansive and beautiful because you're showing up with all that you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you bring that level of awareness and interest, what's awesome about it is it kind of cuts out the games early on. Like if you show up in that way,
right,
you can see really quickly, another person can see really quickly if they're going to be able to match that.
Right.
And it really gives you a lot of heartbreak in the long run. So yeah, I would totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, because I often think, you know, all of the games, because I did this dating app last year, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But so many people are so fake or shallow, and I just have no patience for that. You know, like I want depth, I want meaning, I want like interest, you know, because I feel like our whole lives we're just discovering more parts of ourselves, so that even when you're with a partner for a long time, you know, that if they continue to discover more things about themselves, then they stay interesting as well.
Right. And I have a theory about this, Dawn. My theory is that everyone wants that everybody does want that, but they don't know how to do it. Like they don't know how to go about it. So they're operating off of a script of, if I play games, right? Or if I do X, Y, Z, then I'll get what I want. I'll only get what I want if I'm distant and I'm cold, right? Like I feel like and this is something that I've been learning a lot about recently, is in growing up, there are scripts that have been given to us, right? Not just by our parents, but by society about how we need to act
right.
in certain situations, right? How we need to pursue a goal or pursue a relationship. Like there are these scripts that are given to us, and more often than not, we don't even analyze them to see if they are serving us, right? Is this the right script I should be playing?
Right.
And I think so many people want depth, and they want someone to show up real with, right? I mean, that's what it's all about, but people don't know how to get there, right? And they don't know how to cut past the BS, and they don't know how to be vulnerable sometimes and just say, like, put it all on the line, like, this is what I want, and then to be okay with the result, right? Like there's a lot of talk about vulnerability right now, and that's good. Like, let's be vulnerable. But what happens when it's not received well? Like, how do you respond? And that's something too that I've been coming to grips with is when someone doesn't respond in a reciprocal way, it doesn't mean that they're a bad person.
Right.
Or it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. It just means that we're not right for each other. And so often we get in this place where we experience rejection, right? Or we experience something similar to rejection, and we carry it. We put it in our knapsack, and we bring it to our next encounter with dating. And we see that person in front of us through the lens of the person who just rejected us, right? And it prevents us from actually engaging with the new person. And maybe the new person is the one who's going to be incredible for us, but we're not seeing them clearly. You see what I mean?
Well, I think too, a lot of people they might want depth and vulnerability, but they are afraid to express that themselves because of that fear of rejection or fear of being judged. And you know, this is one of the things that I'm trying to do with this podcast, is to say, you know what, we all struggle with this. You know, we all are afraid. So let's just, instead of pretending that we're not, let's just admit that we are. And, you know, and so even if you're with somebody, you can say, you know what, I'm sort of scared to tell you this, but I want to share this part of me, because I want you to understand me more. I want you to see me more of, you know, exactly who I am. And whether or not you're well received, that's not the point. You know, I mean, ultimately it's the point if you want to find a partner, but it's just like to share who you are and to just have that sense of connection for the moment. I feel like that's what everybody's reaching for, that chance to be seen and heard, whether or not they're really understood, but to be seen and heard and just acknowledged, to know. Didn't you say that they want to be known?
Yes. Yeah. People, when we share things, we want to be known. That's really what it is. And that was actually one of my other articles. It was, the article was, please stop giving unsolicited advice. And it's always bugged me when I'll come into a situation and I share something and people will give this list of things that I can do to fix it. Right. And it rubbed me the wrong way. But when you're on the other side of it, when someone's presenting an issue or a problem or something that they're going through, that is the knee-jerk response. Like, you think, okay, how can I help fix this person, right? How can I help them? Because we want to help. It comes from a good place.
Right.
But what we don't realize is when we're sharing something, when I'm sharing something that is hurtful or hard, what I really want is just to be seen in that moment. Like, to be seen for the blunder, right? To be seen for the pain or whatever it is, and just to be seen in that space. And that's enough for me, right? For someone to see me in that space. And advice is great, but it has to come after, right? It has to come after being seen.
Right.
So yeah, and it was funny you brought up that article, because I thought that line was the most unimpressive line in the whole article, but it was the one that was highlighted the most. People don't want to be fixed, they want to be known, you know? And that's actually what prompted another one of mine, is what we really want in relationships, where I talk about, you know, what is it that we want at the root of every relationship that we pursue. But it's funny how when you talk through things and when you write things, and I don't know if you're a writer, John, but when you write things, you have a perception of how they'll be perceived. but you have no idea. And that's the thing about creating anything is you create it, then you put it out there, and you no longer have control over it, right?
Yeah.
It's like you give it to the world, and you release it, and people decide how they interpret it and whatnot. But it's also the beautiful thing, because if you produce something that you're proud of and that you know will change people's lives, you know, you'll have people reach out and say that. I had such good feedback on the first article we were talking about, and it was crazy. It was really crazy to see how people were responding to it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
How did you start writing about all of this stuff? I mean, that fascinated me, because I know you're still kind of young, but you have this wisdom about you that's really amazing.
Yeah. Well, I look a lot younger than I am. I'm 30. I just turned 30. So I am in my 30s. But yeah, I've always been a writer, and I've always just written for myself. And I just started my blog and writing on Medium earlier this year. So it's been less than a year. And it was because of my roommate at the time. I was writing one night, and she said, "Hey, what are you writing? Or what are you working on?" I said, I'm writing something. And she said, "Read it to me." And I started reading it to her, and she started crying. She's like, people need to hear this. I'm like, what do you mean, people? Like, you need to start a blog. And she is one of those people who, she has the gift of, like, she can just speak over your life. She can speak into being things that aren't. It's crazy. And so she's like, you need to start a blog. Like, people need to hear this. You're going to change people's lives. And I'm just sitting on the couch, like, receiving all of it. Right. And I'm like, okay.
You're like, are you crazy?
And she had, yeah, are you crazy? But what's interesting is, for a while I had contemplated doing writing. Like, I'm working on a book right now, and I've always wanted to write a book. I've always wanted to write a book. And when she told me this, when she kind of spoke over my life in this way, I said, but I'm scared. Like, it was this really vulnerable moment of, like, I realized what she was saying was good, and it was something that I wanted to, like, there was alignment there, but there was also fear. And she said, what are you afraid of? And I said, well, what if nobody reads it? What if nobody reads it? And she said, and she's a chiropractor, so she has this lens of, like, healing and health. But she said, if one person reads it and it changes their life, it'll be worth it. One person. And I couldn't argue with that logically. So I thought about it, and I said, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. The only thing that's holding me back is my own ego, my own perception that when I put something out there, it has to be incredible. It has to be well received immediately. Like, I have to, get all the glory for it. Because I know when you start anything new, you're not going to get what you want. You're not going to get the visibility that you want, at least initially, right?
Right.
So it really was ego. It was fear, and it was ego that was preventing me from really starting. So, but having that conversation with her really pushed me to start. And it's interesting. I would encourage anyone who's listening, if you have a heart to produce content, any form, whether it's writing, anything, if you have a heart for doing something, I would encourage you to pursue it, but you've got to have two things first. And these are the two things that I learned the hard way, but you got to have them. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed. And the first is, you have to actually believe that what you're producing is good. You have to actually believe deep down in your core that it's good content. It's going to add value to people's lives. And the reason why you need to believe that is because the second point is, you have to be willing to eat dirt for a really long time. Like, when you start off on your own, you're going to produce good stuff. No one's going to see it for a while. Like, nobody. Or no, worse, they're going to see it and say,
nobody's going to be listening to this, MaryBeth.
Oh my gosh. They're going to see it and say nothing. The people who you went to grade school with, they're going to see it and say nothing. And it hurts. It really hurts. But that's why you need the first. That's why you need the first to say, okay, this is good. I believe in my core this is valuable. Because if you don't have both, you're going to quit. You're going to quit before you get any sort of visibility.
Yeah, you have to really think about the why of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think too, anything creative that you do, because I'm a dancer. I've danced my whole life. And
What kind of
yeah,
dancing? What kind of dancing?
well, classical ballet first, and then jazz, and then contemporary hip hop. I learned how to tap. I just studied tango for the last 5 years, and I'm back to hip hop now. And I don't do it because of how others will receive it. I do it because it's my creative expression. It's the way to share with the world who I am. Doesn't really matter whether other people give me accolades or not. I mean, it's nice when people say, oh, wow, you're pretty good, or whatever. But it's just like, I just do it because I love it so much, probably like you just love to write.
I love it. I love it. And that's the way I process things. So a lot of people, so I'm an introvert. Most people who meet me find that hard to believe, but extroverts, they process by talking, by interacting, right? Introverts, we process by thinking and writing things. So that's how I process my life experiences, by writing. And yeah, so I really enjoy it.
Yeah. And so you've only just started this blog this year?
Yes.
On Medium. And you already have what, like 15,000 followers or something? I forget.
Oh my gosh. So before the article that you were mentioning, the why people lose it. So if you are on Medium, it's called Why Women Lose Interest. And before that one came out, I only had 200 followers, and now I have over 2,000.
Wow.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. And then I have a lot of people who through Medium found my blog. They subscribed to my blog too. So it's really crazy. It's really, really crazy.
You'll get more. Cool. You'll get more. I mean, that was the thing about, I think when, like you said, when you start something, it doesn't matter, but you just do it because you're drawn to do it, because you're called to do it. You're called to share. And then however it unfolds, you just have to be open to however it unfolds, so maybe your life a year from now will be completely different than what it is right now. And so you just say, bring it on.
I love that. And it's I call it the open hand philosophy in life. Like we have ideas about where we want to go, which is great. But oftentimes, too often, we'll go through life with clenched fists, right? We're like, this is what I want. This is what I want. And then when an opportunity comes to the right of us, our hand is closed. We can't actually take it, right? Our hand is closed. But to have an idea, I love how you put that, like just, I'm ready for it, right? Like to have an idea, to be walking towards something, but with open hands, so that if you see another direction that makes more sense, to adjust. So yeah, I completely agree.
Well, and plus that comes, for me, that's part of that infinite possibilities that in my small mind, I can only see ABC, but there are so many other things that could happen, but you do have to remain open. Yeah. Open, like, okay, I'm ready to receive. I'm giving and it's really cool.
And that's often the thing we forget. Like we're really good givers, just in life in general. But sometimes we're not great receivers, right? When something good comes our way, we take it, but we feel guilty about it, or we just don't receive it well. And that's something that I've been learning about a lot lately, is to be a good receiver, right? To receive things well, whether it's a compliment, whether it's a gift, right? Whether it's some sort of like financial blessing, right? Just to receive. It's cool. It's something that I've been learning.
Just learn to say thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to turn the light on because it got dark all of a sudden over here.
No, it's like, where did your bedroom go?
All right. That's probably a little better.
There we go.
There we go. I'm back.
There we go. Now I can see you. Okay, so
now you can.
It's very obvious, both from your writing and some of the pictures that I've seen, you're super, super close with your mom. I don't know about the rest of your family, but can you talk to me about your family and how you became the woman that you are?
Oh my gosh. I could talk about my mom the rest of this podcast, so you'll have to cut me off. But my mom is one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
Her family came here. They immigrated here from Italy when she was like 10 or 11.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the oldest, and she's just one of the strongest people I know. So she literally, when she was in school, like her and her siblings each would not go to school one day of the week to go with my grandpa on job interviews when they first got here, because they were trying to help. Like, it's crazy to think about it. And to help interpret, because they learned English in school, right? But the parents
Didn't, right.
didn't, or they were learning, but it was slower. And so my mom is like, just this young girl. I'm putting my mind in the place of the employer and thinking, what were they like? How did they take this in? Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, she translated for him during the interview, and he ended up getting a job working for the city of Chicago as a cement worker. Right. And it was a great job, right, for the family in terms of compensation and benefits. It really got them to a place of stability, which was great. But she's just one of those people. My mom, the best word I can use to describe her, she's resilient. She's resilient, but she's not callous. A lot of the times when people go through hard things, they develop this kind of like bristly edge about them, where they're not approachable, they're not sweet, but I don't know how she did it, but she's both. She's strong, but she's also really sweet. And I learned so many life lessons just from her example. Like, we grew up pretty poor. My mom married my dad. He actually had a wife from a previous marriage. Mm-hmm. They had 5 girls. Wow. And then he married my mom and had my sister Ashley and me. So we're a family of 7 girls, believe it or not. I'm the youngest.
Is that
it was a large family.
Is that Ashley Smashley?
That's Ashley. Yes, Ashley Smashley. Yeah. Ashley's the one who's closest to me in age. Yeah, that's Ashley. She's all over everything in my life. So yeah, she's great. But yeah, so we were pretty like lower middle class growing up. We didn't have a whole lot. But one of the things I'm really grateful that she did is we had a TV in the house, but we didn't watch it. We didn't watch it that much. So growing up, all we would do is we would go to the library. Literally, we would go to the library almost every day. And I have memories of taking out books. And I don't know if they still do this now, but back when I was younger, they had a threshold of how many books you could take out at a time. Do you remember this, Dawn? Where they were like, you can only take out so many books.
Yeah.
And so I would strategically try to sneak in like 1 or 2 extra and see if they could catch it. I remember being little, and I would pick the books up, put them on the shelf, and like look up at the woman who's checking them out and see if she would let me get away with 1 extra. Because I was such a reader. I would love to read. Because to me, reading is it's like traveling without having to leave your house, right?
Yeah.
You can be transported into these other lands, these other worlds, and you can learn so much from people. It's one of the reasons why I love history too, and biographies, is because you can learn so much from other people's experiences without having to leave your couch, right?
Right.
So one thing that she instilled in me was just a love of the written word and a love of reading. And it's one of the things that I treasure the most. And it's one of the things that I think got me the furthest where I am right now. Just having that sort of a background, having like that literary background really has helped me in my life. But yeah, I could talk about my mom all day, and we're still very, very, very close. Yeah, she's fantastic.
Mm. I have a relationship like that with my mom too. Like no matter what, like my mom has my back. Well, my dad too. But yeah, it's really, really beautiful when you can have that with your mom. I mean, I have a lot of friends who have bad relationships with their mom, and I feel so badly for them because, my mom and my dad too, but my mom is my rock. Mm. And I have a 16-year-old daughter. And so I want to be that for her too, to just have somebody who will always make you feel held and sort of safe and secure, that no matter
Yeah.
what hard times you're dealing with, that you will always be
Mhm.
supported.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you touched on is important, just the feeling of security. And I
Hmm.
think that's what we gather from any healthy relationship that we're in, you know, obviously
Yeah.
mother-daughter relationship, but even when it comes to dating or friendship, just if you can be with someone who the way they treat you, the way they support you makes you feel safe.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's such a, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Mhm.
It's, it's great. So yeah, I would say that about any relationship, being able to feel safe in a relationship
Mhm.
is amazing.
Well, and I think too, because that was the one thing that I really struggled with in my marriage, that I didn't really feel safe showing up as, like
Mm,
I couldn't really express myself because I'd always be
mm,
cut off, or I'd be told I was wrong, or whatever. And for my kids too, it's like physically, yes, physically we were safe, but emotionally, being able to emotionally express
mm.
ourselves, you know if
Yeah,
you have to be able to do that for yourself. You have to feel safe within
yeah,
yourself in order to be able to provide that safe container for somebody else.
yeah, yeah. And you need to be able to not let what they're going through, like you want to be there for them and empathize, but you can't let it creep over into you, right? Because then you can't be a safe place for them, right?
Right.
Then any negative emotion from anywhere shifts you and it moves. Um, yeah, I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier about being two separate people, that when
Yeah.
they come together, it's pretty beautiful. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I also want to know,
yeah,
because I know that you've talked in some of your articles about your health
yeah.
struggles, and I wanted to know what you've learned,
Mm.
or like how you overcame them, or how you still struggle with them. And because you seem to have such a great attitude, and you're just your own resilience. You said your mom was very
Yeah.
resilient, but you seem to have your own resilience. And so can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, sure. When my sister and I were younger, we we were at a restaurant and we got really bad food poisoning, like parasites, pretty bad.
Uh-huh.
So it really ravaged our gut and our intestines. And I mean, we obviously got sick at that moment, but we saw a lot of residual issues that came down the road, like 10 years later when we were in our adolescence, just a lot of like GI things, a lot of just inflammation in our body. And we couldn't figure out how to get a handle on it. Like we knew it stemmed from that issue, but how do you fix it? So
Mm.
we went to tons of doctors. And for me, it would really manifest in like really bad sinus pain. So if you've ever had a sinus infection, it felt like that every single day of my life, every single day.
Mm.
And when you're in that space, you have such little limited energy, right, to do anything. So, and I was young, right? I was, still in school and like, so you have to focus on what am I going to focus on? And I knew coming from an immigrant family was very much like education, like you need to get a good job, like all that. So I really
Mm.
poured myself into school, and that was my thing. Like that was the one area that I really poured myself into. And I was also on the shyer side too, so that didn't help at all. So that's why, I'm looking back, I'm like, how did I get through high school and even college just without, like, I mean, I had friendships, but I didn't date. But again, it's like it's your level of energy. Like, what can you tolerate, right?
Yeah.
And then I ended up moving out to Phoenix for my first job, and the issues got exacerbated there. I just tenfold. And
Mm.
I was at this place where I would come home every day from work and I would just sob I
Mm.
would lean over, I'd be in my bedroom, there was carpet, and I would just lean over and just sob into the couch every single day.
Aw.
Or not to the couch, into the carpet. Because my family was here in Chicago. I was out there, but I couldn't stop. Like, what were my options? I couldn't quit my job. That was what was paying the bills, right? Like, what were my options? The only option I had was to keep going, right?
Mhm.
And what's interesting is when you're in that place where you are so in so much pain, physical pain, all the other bullshit disappears. Like any grudges you held against people, anything that takes any more of your energy has to leave. It has to. So in that space, I was able to let go of a lot of stuff, a lot of hurt that I had carried, because it didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered for me was getting better, you know? And so, yeah, I think you talked about resilience. Like that time for me, it was hell. But being on the other side of it now, I wouldn't undo it because of what it taught me. Like it taught me that no matter what you have going on, like you wake up in the morning and you keep going. Like doesn't mean you pretend that you're okay, but it means you keep going, right? And you decide how you want to interpret this, right? So yeah, I moved back here to Chicago because I thought maybe being out there, being like the new allergies and stuff, maybe that's what was making it worse. But I moved back to Chicago. It didn't get better. So that was crushing of hope. And that's another thing too. And you know, for everyone who's listening to the podcast, if you're going through some sort of physical pain, the one thing that was probably the most hurtful thing that I would hear is people would tell me, it's going to get better. Like, just wait, it's going to get better. And that was so painful in the moment because the one thing you need is hope that it'll get better, but it's also the thing that's the most painful because to hope for something and then every day to wake up and for it not to be different, that hurts. That shit hurts. And like, oh gosh. So through that whole process, I learned a lot about how to hold space and be present for people who are in pain. It might not be physical pain. It may be relational pain or emotional pain. But through that crucible, I learned what to do and what not to do. And I think that's where my idea of presence really comes from, is what most people just want in any situation when they're struggling is just someone to sit there and listen. And we often feel like we don't have anything to bring to the table. I mean, if you think about things that people have gone through crazy stuff. And the tendency is to avoid them because we know we don't have what it takes to actually bring healing, right? Or we're like, there's no way I can fix the situation. There's absolutely no way. And that's true. You probably can't. But what you can do is just sit and listen and just be there for the person, right? And offer them a distraction. This is one thing that people don't realize. For someone who's suffering, they're in their head so much. They're feeling pain. They're thinking about their pain. So to just show up and say, we're going for a walk, like we're walking around the block, and just to take command of the conversation and to be the one who owns the conversation and be the one who talks. And you don't even have to ask them about their pain, but just own the conversation and talk about your own stuff, right? That is a breath of fresh air for someone who's suffering, because for a moment, they cannot think about their pain and they can focus on something else. And it's a glass of water in the desert. So that I learned so much through that. And that's why I say I wouldn't undo it. It was terrible, but I wouldn't undo it. And so a few years ago, my sister and I, we were trying all different things, and we decided to start to eliminate, we were reading a lot of books about like the gut and the intestines and like how the food we eat can impact that. So we decided to eliminate gluten and dairy, and that made us feel so much better. Really? Because as a result of what happened to us, like we just were very prone to anything that would produce inflammation. And so it's not that we're allergic to either of those things, but I don't know, we cut them out, and Dawn, I got my life back. Like I finally felt better for the first time. And it was like a new beginning for me, being in my mid to later 20s. And I think that's what anyone who's gotten a second chance, it gives you this new zest for life. And it gives you this new sense of, now I really need to do something with what I have. now I really need to, like, every day is precious, but my life matters, and I'm going to do something with it that's going to be beautiful and be amazing. So, yes.
I think that healthy people often take their health for granted.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And so when you have health issues, when you get to the other side or find some relief, it's like, thank God, goddess, for, for this. Like, I'm so grateful for whatever you're grateful for, right?
Oh my gosh. And before this, Dawn, I was that person who would see people talk about their health issues, and I would, in my mind, I'd be like, just go to a doctor, And looking back, it like, I literally want to throw up when I think about my reaction to that. And that's a message for everyone. Beware, anything that you're really arrogant about, you will be subjected to it. Trust me. Okay.
Yeah.
So this was like the way for me to tear that down, right? Is to have me go through it and realize it's not as simple as just find a doctor, right? You find doctors and they have no idea what's wrong with you, right? They have no idea how to, and then what to do. So again, it gave me a lot of compassion too for people who are suffering, not just physically, but in any space, because things aren't a quick fix. If they were, the person who's suffering would have figured it out already, right? They're in pain. They're going to figure out a way to get out of it,
Right. I know. I'm always like, oh, well, here, let me just wave my magic wand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it does. I think that any struggle that you go through in your life helps bring you compassion for yourself.
Oh my gosh.
So that you can extend that compassion to other people.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And Dawn, and it starts with ourselves, right?
Yep.
I always remember that when I'm dealing with people who are really critical, just in general. And it makes me think, like, the things they say about me, but times that by 10, that's how they feel about themselves. It comes from internally, right? Like, so much of how we treat people is a projection of how we see ourselves. And even in that moment, when someone's really critical, it gives you some compassion, right? So.
Well, and I think too, a lot of times we're the most critical with ourselves. That's one of the things that, I feel like we really need to develop this compassion for ourselves, because, for instance, your sister or your mom would never say horrible things to you, right? They would never say horrible things to you, the kind of things that you may have said to yourself. So it's trying to figure out how to be that best friend or that loving mom or that, wonderful friend or colleague who's always cheering you on, to help you see yourself through, well, for me, it's through the eyes of the divine. It's like how the perfect parent would look at you and, as a small child and hold you as a baby and go, oh my gosh, you're the most beautiful, thing in the world. And it's like, if we can just give ourselves that gift, then we could probably get through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I firmly believe that the lies we tell ourselves are one of our greatest points of suffering, hands down. Because my gosh, if someone followed you for a day and listened to the way you talked about yourself and like said it out loud, people would be shocked. They'd say, like, stop abusing that person, right?
Embarrassed,
right? So yeah, it's this concept of how do we talk to ourselves, right? And what do we think about ourselves? How do we view ourselves? And one of the things that I do, this is one of my life hacks that I'll share with you, but I actually have a picture of myself when I was little, when I was like 5 years old. And I have it, I have like a collage well, you can't see it now but it's on the left side of my bed, pictures and things like that. And whenever I look at it, I tell myself, like, what do I have to do today to give this little girl her best shot? Because I am that little girl grown up, right? And oftentimes it really is how I treat myself, and having that weird sort of dialogue with the picture, it helps me. It really helps me, because it's like, yes, we adults are grown up versions of the little people that we once were. Right.
Yeah.
And if we can see ourselves as, you know, that like young, fresh, enthusiastic, like
infinite possibilities.
Right. We're going to treat ourselves so much more compassionately.
Yeah.
Right. Like when you see a little kid in the grocery store and they're running and they fall down, you don't mock them. You think it's adorable, right? You're like, oh my gosh. And like, you help them back up. And, so what if we treated ourselves that way? Right. Like, why do we get so upset when we ourselves fall down? We would never treat a child that way. So that's one of my things that I try to do pretty regularly, is like, what does it take? What would it take today to give that little girl her best shot?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I often say too, like, what would I tell my 5-year-old self? You know, what would I tell my 5-year-old self? And then sometimes like if I'm in the midst of stuff, I say, what would my 80-year-old self tell me now? So that you
oh
know
my
that.
Gosh. Yeah, I love it, Dawn. That's actually something I've been thinking about, that I'm planning on writing about at some point, but it's still mulling over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the idea of, when we have to make a really tough decision, how do we decide that, right? And one of the things that I've been thinking about is, picture yourself 10 years down the road. Picture yourself there. Look back in this moment. How would you have wanted to handle it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that has been such a guidepost for me. I started doing that recently, and it has made decisions so much easier, because you get this objectivity, right? You can step away from the situation and see it for what it is. And it really helps. It really, really helps. So I love that you said that your 80-year-old self, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
And I just interviewed another guy this afternoon, and he said, I'll paraphrase it, but he said, you know, is who I am right now congruent with who I want to be? Which is basically the same, you know, it's the same thing. And and this is like on a side note, but because you're talking about taking, you know, what can I do to give my 5-year-old self my best shot? And I saw a picture of you shooting a gun.
Yes, I love shooting. I love shooting.
So how do you feel about yourself? Because when you were talking about this, I was just thinking, like, how do you feel about yourself when you're shooting that gun? What in the world made you do that? And how do you feel about yourself when you do that?
Oh my gosh. So I've been thinking about this a lot, in various aspects of my life, of like, what are things that are in my grasp that I haven't yet seized, right? What are these things that are open to me that I haven't yet taken advantage of, right? Because I'm a big believer that opportunities are literally at our doorstep, and we just need the eyes to see them, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up in a family, like, we didn't really own guns, shoot guns, like, never was part of our family, like, story, right? You often hear people who's like, my dad had a shotgun in the back, you know, like, that was not our family. But I was thinking about it, and thinking about all the things I hold dear. And one of them is the freedom that we have in this country to speak freely, right? Our First Amendment. Like, I think that is one of the most important things that we have, that the freedom of speech, right, to speak our mind. And I was thinking about, like, what are the other ones that I'm not taking advantage of? And the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, I'm like, I've never gone shooting ever, right? Like, what does that even feel like? What would that look like? So I literally went through the process, and I started, and there are a lot of rules you have to follow, right? You have to get it's at least here in Illinois, you have to get your FOID card, to at least handle a firearm, even at a store. And then, like, if you want to purchase one, you have to go through the background check. I mean, there's so many things. There's so many things I wasn't even aware of. But I really just wanted to learn how to shoot, right? And so I took one-on-one lessons with an instructor for like once a week for a few months, because I wanted to learn like properly. I wanted to learn the right way.
Yeah.
And it is so empowering. It's really, really empowering. Because, and this is one thing too, like I'm younger, right? For a lot of my life, I've lived alone. So just to know that I could defend myself if I needed to, like that's a really empowering thing. And in my mind, I'm like 10 foot tall and I could handle the world, but I'm literally like this big. So it's kind of a great equalizer for me. Right. But actually, like just the act of going to the range and shooting, like it's a lot harder than it looks. So I would recommend getting an instructor if you're starting, but
I think it looks hard. I don't think it looks easy.
It's hard. It's hard. And there are a lot of rules and like, there's a lot of safety things, and they're really good about like teaching you them. And there's a sense of openness and trust when you go to the range. It's really interesting. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been really fun. And I'm honing my skills there. Now I'm just going on my own. I don't need an instructor anymore since I've learned the basics, but I do it every now and then, and it's a lot of fun. And it's really empowering for me as a woman to know that this is something that now I know how to do, and God forbid I ever have to use it. I hope I never have to use it. But
on a bad date, you're done.
Well, it's really funny whenever people find out, they're like, don't mess with her. I also box too. So like completely don't mess with MaryBeth. Like she will end you if there are any issues. So
MaryBeth is small but mighty.
Yes. It's so funny you say that. When I first started boxing, my instructor, he looked at me and he said, for such a small person, you're very strong. Like, or no, he said it the other way. He said, you're very strong for such a small person. And really funny, but yeah.
So how do you see your life 10 years from now, MaryBeth?
Oh my gosh. This is interesting. It's funny. If you asked me this question like a year ago, I would have had a totally different answer, like completely different answer. But since I started writing, since I started doing this, I see myself this is going to sound weird.
No,
but
it's not going to sound weird at all. Go ahead.
I see myself doing the exact same thing. I love my life right now. Like I love what I'm doing. I love my work. I love my blog. I see myself doing the same thing, but maybe on a larger scale, right? And it's really interesting. Like I said, I would have answered this totally differently a year ago before I started writing, but I'm in this place right now where I'm really living life with purpose. Like I wake up every day and I have intent to what I do, and I explore new things. I talk to new people all the time, and I wouldn't change it. Like I wouldn't change what I'm doing, which I guess is a good thing, right? Means I'm in a good place right now. But like to what you were saying before, having an open hand, because if I had a set plan a year ago about where I wanted to be, I wouldn't have been open to my friend telling me, hey, you should start a blog, right? And foreseeing that in me and calling that forth. So from where I am, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and it's really fulfilling for me. But I am going to keep an open hand about it and see where this could lead.
Yeah, I think you have a huge impact with your writing. And I can see you speaking about it as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you have a lot of really amazing things to share. And if you don't mind, I printed out your How Strong Women Become Strong.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Can I read a little excerpt from it?
Of course you can. Of course you can.
So I've read it probably, 5-6 times, and every time I get tears in my eyes because it impacted me so much. And I know you sort of wrote it as a commemoration to your mom in a way, right? Yeah. And I just think it's really beautiful. MaryBeth talks about, all of these things that take a profile in courage. And so
Yeah.
you have to read the article, but I just want to read you the last little part. She says, cherishing scars, they remind her of what she's become. They remind her that she is a victor, a profile in courage. And then a change. It's no longer courage, but the air she breathes, settled in, like she stopped renting and finally bought real estate in her own skin. This is my home. Can I help you? Eyes open, heart full, embracing life, loving all of it. The good, the bad, it's all hers. Suddenly she stands before you, resilient, feminine, breathtaking, a legacy unfolding. Nothing is wasted. The strong woman knows that no pain is too deep, no dream too far-fetched, no encounter too unredeemable. Every experience, whether good or bad, enriches her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make me cry.
Oh my gosh, I'm crying just listen. So that last piece, this is something that I've been learning probably the past, since I started since that I wrote that piece, and I've been learning since that moment, because I realized something when I wrote that, and it's this: we need to own everything about us, everything, the things that hurt us, the things that scare us, the things that we wish didn't happen but did, the amazing things. Like, there's something so incredible about just standing in who you are and not orphaning any part of us. And when you get to that place, it's like, what can stop you at that point? Not a single thing.
Nothing.
Because you're no longer scared of the hurt or the pain. And I wrote that. I had just gone through a breakup like a few weeks before I wrote that. And I had a choice, because I was really in love, and I had to choose how I process that, right? And I had to make a decision, and this is the decision we all make when we get hurt, is, how do I let this impact me? Like, will this define me? And so many people, it was literally at a crossroads, and it's so easy to do when you get hurt. Is you can either go one way of, well, forget about this, forget it. Like, I'm not going to show up anymore. I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm not going to hope for anything good in my life. It sounds very dramatic to say out loud, but we literally do this in our mind, in our internal dialogue. And we shut ourselves down from the really good things in life, the things that we really want. Or we could take the other path of accepting it and saying, this is what it is. I can't change it, but I know what I still want. I know I still want love. I know I still want this great job, right? I know I still want whatever it is that you got burned by. Like, and it's a tragedy if you think about it, that if you take path one, you're actually foregoing the thing that you wanted in the first place. Like, you're just giving it up. You're relinquishing it.
Right.
And that is the danger of not owning everything, of not owning fully who you are and your hurts and your pains, and not letting them to dictate where you go. Certainly you listen to them. Certainly you let them teach you lessons. But in the end, you decide where you go, and you decide the story you tell yourself. And that's the other thing that I think we forget, is when something happens to us that in the world standards, it would look bad, or it doesn't feel right, or whatever, we get to tell ourselves the story about how to interpret it, right? And how to move on from there. Because then in that moment, you're no longer the victim, right? You're no longer you're determining the story, and you then take back the agency and you take it where you want it to go. And that's the part where I was talking about, that nothing is wasted. I'm a firm believer that nothing is ever wasted, no matter what you've gone through. And this is easy to see. It's hard to see in relationships, but it's easier to see in jobs. Think about it. Everyone who's listening to this podcast, we've all had those like weird jobs in high school or right out of college or grad school that like don't really technically apply to what we're doing now, but we learned so many things there that have applied. Right. Like my first job, I was in high school. I was a receptionist at a music school, and I was deathly afraid of answering the phone, like deathly. And I had to get over that real fast. So now to this day, I am fantastic on the phone. Whenever I have to talk to someone on the phone, it's like the phone MaryBeth comes out, and it's great. And literally nothing is wasted. And we see it in our jobs, right? We can all point back to these kind of meaningless jobs that we had, but they added so much value to our current position wherever we are. But I think we need to start seeing that in terms of relationships, that whatever we went through, like not a single moment was wasted, that we look at it, we reflect on it, we take what we need, and we bring it forward.
Yeah. I always feel like the story is what you're in, right? Or this chapter is the mess that you were just in.
Yeah.
And so what do I want my next chapter to read like, like a different part of the story. It's like, our whole life is a book. And so at every point we're just writing a new chapter for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So MaryBeth, how would you define what is real love?
I would say that real love is when you can be completely yourself, when you feel safe, and when you feel seen, when you feel like someone actually sees you and they see all of you, not the little compartments. They see all of you and they love you anyway. I think that's our deepest fear in relationships, is that if I unveil who I really am, if I tear down the walls, like I like to think about this. This is another article that I'm like in the process of writing right now, so you're getting a preview of it. But think about, all those shows on HGTV right now where they're like redoing homes, right? And they take this like older home that had all these rooms, and they do the demo day, they pull down the walls, and they do the open concept, right? I think our greatest fear is that we show up into a relationship, we have the demo day, we bring down the walls to create this open space, and that the other person looks at it and says, oh my gosh, like this isn't what I signed up for. You're too much.
Yeah.
Right? I can't handle it. You're too much.
Yeah.
Like the parts of you that you are most fearful of bringing to me, like actually when you bring that, I'm going to leave. That's what we're scared of. That's what we're really scared of. So to me, real love, and I think this is more than just romantic love. This can be platonic love too, with friendships, right? Like to have a friend who you can truly be yourself with, can show all of you and have them look at you and actually see you, right? To sit with you and see the pain, see the good, see where you are. I think that's real love. And to have it reciprocated, like love has to be reciprocated. It can't go one way. It can't go one way. So when you feel that, and then when it's reciprocated is true love.
It's complete acceptance.
Yeah.
Well, you are an amazing, amazing woman. You are a beautiful woman.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful woman. And I'm so glad that I found you. And we just live right down the street.
Oh my gosh, we're going to grab a cup of coffee. Everyone else is going to be jealous because we're going to be hanging out outside of this podcast. So,
as soon as we hang up, we're going out.
I love it.
So MaryBeth, how do people find you?
Okay. So you can find me on two places. So if you are on Medium, and if you don't know what Medium is, it's an online publication. So you can go to medium.com and you can find me at my handle, which is at MaryBeth Gronek. MaryBeth Gronek. And you could find all my stories there. Also, you can find me at my blog, which is agoodandspaciousland.com. So either of those places, you'll find me.
Yeah. Great stuff, MaryBeth. I'm so thankful for tell your roommate thank you.
I will tell her that. I know. I tell her that often. So I will tell her that now. You say it too.
You got to give her big credits in your next book.
Oh, I should. Maybe I'll dedicate to her. Maybe. Although there's a long list of people who I need to dedicate books to. So maybe I just have to produce a lot more books. We'll see.
Okay, so listeners, I am sure you enjoyed this conversation. So much depth and meaning and insight and, just great advice. We'll say great advice for how to show up, more resilient and authentic and, just loving and accepting yourself and learning how to love and accept each other. So you're a very wise woman, MaryBeth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here. So everybody, for my listeners, if you liked this, which you should, I can't see why you wouldn't, please subscribe to the Wake Up to Real Love podcast and share with all of your friends. If you would like support in finding more connection, expansion, authenticity in your relationships, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at The Awakening with Dawn. Feel free to contact me through there, and I'd be honored to help you find and create more real love in your life. And as all of my guests seem to say, as we talk about all of this, and MaryBeth, you have talked a lot about this too, that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself, so that you can be the kind of partner that you want to have, so that you can be the kind of friend that you want to have, so that you can be the kind of, daughter, mother, colleague that you want to have. It all starts with you. So thank you so much, MaryBeth, for coming. And I welcome you on anytime.
My pleasure, Dawn. It was great to be on the program.
All right. Thanks a lot, listeners, for listening. And every day, wake up to more real love in your life. Take care. We'll see you next time. Bye.